Hi everybody, and welcome to the Good Woo. This is the weekly woo, so let's get started. We pulled squirrel and butterfly weed. Now I'm going to start with butterfly weed because this is a fascinating plant. It's also called pleurisy root because of its deep tonic and healing effect on our lungs. And what are we dealing with right now? COVID-19, the coronavirus, which affects the lungs. Now, what's interesting about the lungs, if you've watched my video on the energetic body, I explained that every organ in our body has a magnetic field, and all cells in our body are affected by our thoughts and our emotions. Well, the lungs, and look, even this butterfly sort of looks like it could be lungs. Our lungs are where we hold grief, sadness, and guilt. So on a very large level, as all things are connected, a part of this virus coming into our society is pointing our attention to the lungs, right? And we also had the Amazon fires, which many people consider the Amazon forest to be the lungs of the planet. So grief, sadness, and guilt. It is truly up for clearing, cleansing, not just the planet in general, but the human collective, and then also each individual person. Now, what's interesting about the butterfly and the process of the caterpillar becoming the butterfly is that in the cocoon, it becomes completely liquid. It completely transforms what it is. It loses all sense of what a caterpillar was. It becomes liquid and then turns into this butterfly. Now, the butterfly, light, free, independent, it can't fly if it's holding on to the guilt and the sadness and the grief. So this plant is really giving us an invitation right now to pay attention to the lungs, pay attention to the sadness and the grief and the guilt, and to release it. You know, it's also interesting, this plant, because of its very bright color, it attracts butterflies and bees. And there's something about, when you can look, you can see like, I don't know if you can see that, the rainbow coming out of the flower. The butterfly has to stay light and free of the guilt, the deeper, denser emotions. If we process them, we're given this ability to magnetize beauty, magic, and miracles into our life. But we can't do that when we're holding on. So look, we're losing a lot right now. The old world is truly crumbling around us. After every crisis, the newness on the other side is always better than where we were before. That goes personally and collectively. But while we're in the middle of it, it can feel very counterintuitive to be speaking of that. The way to get to that perspective is to cry, and you know, the respiratory system and the tears and what happens as we cry and the snot and all of that. As you purge and release, you're going to be creating room for new inspiration to come in. But we don't want to skip this step, that we're in the cocoon turning into liquid, the liquid of tears, right? The liquid of the release of letting go of who you thought you were, of what your life was gonna look like. You know, people not having graduations, not being able to have their weddings. All of these things we're letting go of. And there's grief that must be acknowledged and honored and respected. This is what this plant really points to. And also, if you are having bronchial and lung issues, to maybe do some research on butterfly reed or pleurisy root and to see if that could be a natural, healthy herbal remedy that could help you along your way. Of course, if you're working with a doctor, you want to ask them first. Then we got the squirrel. Now, what's interesting about the squirrel, I've been experiencing squirrels like every day, multiple times a day, because I live near a park. But what's interesting about them, right? There's this sort of hoarder energy, and then there's the preparation energy. You know, they gather for the winter and they store it in a sacred place for them so that they're prepared for those months where it will be cold and they won't be able to find nourishment. The dark side of this is the hoarder, for sure, which we're all encountering. I mean, I know for me, I'm going back and forth between like, what is the difference between being prepared and being paranoid? This is what the squirrel is really asking us to look at. Yes, take the responsibility to prepare for the future because we don't really know what that's going to bring. And so you want to have a sense of, yes, I've been responsible. Yes, I've been mindful about my intuitive hunches about what's coming. But it also says to take the time to emotionally restore, knowing that on the other side of this, we will all have to, fold back into civilization and create new structures. So to really take this time to gather your internal forces, to gather your chi. And we do that, we can't really gather until we've let go. So we let go of the grief, right? We feel it, first of all. That's how you let go of it, is that you feel it, you accept it, you admit and acknowledge that the grief is there. Grief is such a powerful portal to spiritual awakening as well. And I say that from experience. We resist it, we resist it, we resist it. And we can, turn to drugs and alcohol and sex and, overworking to deny it. But right now, in this period of stasis that we're in, it really cannot be denied. And it's begging to be released. From the animals that died in the Australian fires and the Amazonian fires, the grieving that we all have on a subconscious level for them, billions of animals, to this grief of the old world collapsing, even if there's parts of it we want to let go of, to the grief of the things that we're missing now, that now we'll never take for granted again, that sense of freedom we had that has been confined right now. Grief. To heal it, we must feel it. And then we will be allowed to really see internally, what do we need to shore up on? Where do we need to pull in our energy to fortify ourselves for what is to come? Because on the other side of this quarantine, well, we're going to have a lot of cleaning up to do, cleaning up from not just this period, but perhaps decades of systems that ultimately weren't working. And some were that will need fortifying. So squirrel is also a signal to, there can be a lot of busyness and the irony of we're in a lockdown. And for those of you who are working still, well, thank you so much, first of all. And you'll really relate to the busyness. There is a need for the essential workers. It's grown exponentially. So there's a lot of busyness going around. But the squirrel also signifies a certain amount of mental busyness where, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like with all the workshops and like the Instagram lives and all of these, Zoom meetings, it's just in some ways we're more mentally active than we've ever been. And the squirrel says also to slow down on that, to make sure that you're really acknowledging when it's too much so that you can step back and go to a different kind of task. This is an amazing time to go through your home and see what you want to get rid of. What can you give away? What is clutter? What is clogging up your ability to have mental and emotional clarity? So a lot of that is getting rid of the old grief and the new grief, getting rid of old stuff so that you can make room to have the clarity. We can't see or think straight when we're stuffing down these painful feelings. So, you ready for this? I also pulled crystal cards and some other cards for us for this week, but I am going to be finishing up this reading on the Good Woo Patreon page. So if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe to the channel, and of course go to thegoodwoo.org if you're interested in personal sessions with me, or you can just email me with any comments, questions, queries. I know we're all going through a financial transformation. If you need a sliding scale, just email me. Let me know what's going on at info@thegoodwoo.org. And screenshot this. If I can get it in a good, screenshot that. There you go. Let these images speak to you this week. And if you want more, head on over to the Good Woo on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for viewing. Much love and blessings this week.